Hi, welcome everyone. This is going to be a video on the VWAP indicator on TradingView. I'm going to go over a few things that I use it for, how I use it, how you can put it on your chart on TradingView, and there are a ton of other videos out there through RLT and through other sources on various things you can do with VWAP. Um, I'm going to simply go over what I use it for and how I use it in my trading. Um, but feel free, there's plenty of other information out there on different strategies, etc. for VWAP. So I'm going to change my screen over and we'll get started. Okay, so what we're looking at here is Palantir, and this is today, which happens to be the 24th of March. And this is a great example of VWAP being used for support. VWAP is this purple line on my chart. And as you can see, it broke out early in the morning, retested, came back up, made a new high, came back down, and essentially used VWAP, especially in these locations, as support. Wasn't able to ever break below VWAP and then kept going higher, almost got back to the high currently at about 5 minutes before market close is still above the VWAP, which is down here. So this is a good example of support for VWAP. And it's also, let me see if, oops, turn this off. Let's see if there's any good examples of EMAs crossing the VWAP. I don't see any really here. Let's check out Apple. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, Apple, we've got some good examples. So another reason, another way I use VWAP is if I'm already in a trade, then I will use the VWAP to check and see if EMAs are breaking above or below VWAP. Usually when the 10 and 20 break above VWAP, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. In this particular case, let's see, right? Where are we at here? Okay, so right here, you've got the 10, which is this green line below VWAP. Right here, it breaks VWAP, and you can see that this candle popped. And then obviously it retested, but it popped here. So if I were in a trade and I was looking to see if my trade was going to continue to go in the direction I want, I would look to see if the 10 EMA is getting close to VWAP. When it's getting close to VWAP and it touches and then breaks through VWAP, I would expect to see this pop in there. Um, Same with the 20, which crossed VWAP right here. Take that off. There we go. So the 20, which is this light blue line, crossed by, I think I actually deleted my VWAP. There we go. Sorry about that. So right here, the 20 crossed. This is where the 10 crossed. We got this pop. We got this candle came back, retested into VWAP, and then the 20 crossed and we got a pop again. And then we had a double top. We came down. It crossed VWAP, did go down to the 100, but you could still see a little bit of support in here at the VWAP. And then, of course, this is what it's doing presently. So I look at it for support and resistance. I look at it for whether or not the 10 and the 20 are crossing, 10 and 20 EMA are crossing the VWAP to see if I'm going to get a pop out of there. Um, One of the reasons VWAP is so effective is for a long time, it's been where big money, aka stockbrokers, who work for companies or work for brokerage firms, A lot of those companies get their bonuses and commissions based off of how close they buy to VWAP. Because you got to remember, they're playing the big game. They're not retail traders. So if they're buying at an average price, like right in this area here, they're buying at the VWAP, and then the stock takes off like it did here. Their commissions and how well they're considered to be doing for their brokerage firm is based off of how close they buy and sell to the VWAP. So if you bought down here, or if they bought, let's say, let me find my VWAP here. Um, so if they buy in here and then this thing sells off, obviously they didn't do very well. But if they sell in here and then this thing comes all the way back down here and they close out here, they're doing fairly well because they bought at VWAP, which is volume weighted average price. So what that basically means is you're buying where everybody else, or that price is where most people are buying. So if it's at $100 and there's 10 million shares at $100, that's the volume weighted average price, that $100 for 10 million shares. And that line changes as the volume changes, and it's plotted via these lines, or this line. Similar to the exponential moving average, or the simple moving average. Um, and all moving averages or any kind of average indicator. But the volume weighted is based off of the higher the volume at that price, uh, that's where the line is going to move to or move away from if volume is changing. So if the volume is, let's say there was 10 million shares here, and now there's 12 million shares here, the volume weighted average price indicator is going to change and move down to where the higher volume was for any particular price. And then, of course, that gives you this line. So that's why they get paid to buy off of that. Um, Another way you could look at that would be pockets of liquidity. If everybody's buying and selling in this area, then you've got your volume weighted average price. That's where most people are comfortable with the price being, hence the large amount of volume. So they buy or sell at that point, and then they wait for it to go higher in this case or lower over here, and then they get out. So that's why this actually works the way it works, is because that's where the big money is. If it were just retail traders at that price, there wouldn't be the price action that you see um, with VWAP. It wouldn't even be an indicator at that point. So um, let's move on to how else I use this. So I use it for support and resistance at times. And I usually do that if I'm looking to get into a trade or if I'm looking to get out of a trade. So let's go back to Palantir, I believe it was. Zoom in on this. Okay. So here we are on Palantir again. And if I were in this trade, let's say I got in this trade, let's take a look here. Okay, so let's say I just got in here. Okay, and I don't know, I'm looking to hit a home run and go way up here, which I wouldn't normally do, but let's just say that's what we're looking to do. So we get triggered in the trade, come all the way up here. Pretty good start to our 4R trade. That's about 3R there, but I want to hold out for 4R. So I wait and I see that the trade is coming back into VWAP. So far, it hasn't broken, it hasn't broken, hasn't broken. Now, it has gone below my entry, but since it hasn't broken below VWAP, I'm still comfortable that this trade might work because I'm finding the support at VWAP that I would expect to find. End of the day, it starts climbing, it starts climbing, it starts climbing. It's back up to about my 3R. Doesn't quite hit my 4R, but I'm back up into that 3R range. So at this point, I would close this trade out. But the whole reason I'm able to stay in this trade is because I've got my VWAP and I haven't broken that VWAP yet. It touched the VWAP, but it didn't close below. So if I had gotten a close below here, that would have changed my whole perspective on this trade, and I would have started playing defense and raising my stops more aggressively to minimize my losses in case this closed below VWAP and then just kept rolling lower. So that's another way I use it. I would also use it if I were attempting to get in a trade. So let's say this is not a good stock for what I want to show you on this one. This would be a good one here. So if I want to get in this trade, let's say I like this Morningstar reverse right here, or even better, I like this double bottom. So I would want to set my trade up to look something like this. Now, once I have my setup, let's say I want to go up to here. Once I have my setup, I'm going to look and say, okay, I like this setup as far as the chart pattern, but what else do I have to worry about? Well, in this case, I've got a moving average here, I've got a moving average here, and more importantly, I've got the VWAP right in front of me and on a 3-minute chart. If I go to the 5-minute chart, I still have VWAP right here in front of me. 15-minute chart, uh, VWAP is right here in front of me. So this is going to keep me out of this trade. And the reason it's going to keep me out of this trade is because remember, we use VWAP for support and resistance. So since it's below, my entry is below the VWAP, I would expect that there's potentially going to be resistance coming up into the moving average or up into VWAP. So I don't want to get in here. So I would hold off on this trade, and rightfully so, because you can see it did get through VWAP, but then it turned around. So it used VWAP and these moving averages as resistance and went back down all the way to my stop. So if I'm not going to set this trade up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until we get a close above VWAP, and now hopefully it will use VWAP as a support to get in. So then if I set my trade up, I've got closes above VWAPs here. I've got 3 bull candles in a row. I would probably set it up right above this bear candle. Now that we've got some bearishness coming in, if it can break above the bearishness, then hopefully it will break out. My stop would be, if I'm aggressive, somewhere, well, if I'm aggressive up here, this is kind of moderate, and then way down here if you're really, really trying to be careful. So we'll put it at the moderate spot. We would shoot for probably high of day, since this pivot does not give me my risk reward. So I'm looking to get like 1.76 on this. I'm already above VWAP. I've had some bearishness come in. Now I want this bearishness to be taken out, and then hopefully it breaks above. However, as you can see, never came back up. So me waiting for it to be above VWAP and then getting in after a bear candle prevents me from ever getting in this trade. I've got a nice no trigger and I lose nothing on the trade simply because I waited for it to be above VWAP, and then I waited for some bearishness to come in because I'm going bullish, and the trade never triggers. So that's another way that I will use VWAP. When I'm waiting for the MAs to cross or the EMAs to cross, um, covered this a few minutes ago, but we will, I'll wait to see if it's going to pop and cross over there. If it does, if I do have a moving average that crosses the VWAP and I get that pop, then that's an indication to me that my trade is still working, and I'll hold for a little bit longer. Once I start getting closes below VWAP, that's when I'm going to seriously start to consider playing defense and getting a lot more aggressive with my stops and moving things up closer and closer and closer to avoid giving back either all of the gains or to avoid losing my full risk if it's not staying above VWAP. So using the VWAP as an indication on how you manage your trades, if you're bullish and it starts to get below VWAP, then that is a potential bearish signal that it might be rolling over, or vice versa. If you're in bearish and it closes above VWAP, that's an indication that it might be flipping on you and going bullish. So then you can change your trade management accordingly to minimize those losses or try to lock in some of those gains. Um, and then, of course, I talked about whether or not I would enter it below VWAP, which I wouldn't if I'm going bearish, or above VWAP if I'm going bearish, which I wouldn't. I would wait for that confirmation close above. Now, sometimes you're going to get the close above, and then of course the candle is just going to run because the candle that happens to close above, you also have a moving average that crosses the VWAP and you get that pop. And then you dismiss that trade. And that's going to happen a lot. There's tons of trades you're going to miss. So I don't necessarily worry about those too much. They might upset me for the split moment that it happens, but there's a reason why I wait to get into trades that are just underneath the VWAP or just over VWAP, depending on which direction I'm going. So I miss them, no big deal. I go find something else. Let me see if I can find any other good examples of some VWAP situations in here to point out real quick. Um, this one isn't bad, as you can see. Spent a lot of time around the VWAP today. We had resistance here and here, and then it finally broke out. You've got your 10 EMA crossing right here, and this candle popped a little early, right before it crossed, but I would have been watching for it to cross there at some point if I were already in this trade. You've got support here, you've got some support here. It's kind of dancing around the VWAP in here, comes up here, got a little bit of resistance there. And then over here towards the end of the day, again, we've got this chop right around VWAP. So as you can tell, I mean, it does have some movement in here, but for the most part, it never got away from VWAP today on Microsoft. So this um, would not have been a stock I traded today. I was watching it earlier this morning, pre-market. I did have it on my list, as you can see, for bullish retest to play it. And it just never came in with the setup that I was looking for a bullish retest. And you can see what it did all day. So had it pulled away from VWAP, that may have been a time for me to look at playing it. But as you can see, it never came away from VWAP. So I didn't take any trades on this today. Once a stock gets quite a distance from VWAP, you're going to want to consider not taking a trade on it when it's far away from VWAP, again, because um, retail or big money brokers get better commissions when they buy at VWAP. So as you can see on Amazon, we came all the way up here. This is not the time to this is not the time to get into Amazon. It's way away from VWAP. VWAP is way back here. So when you get this pullback, this is a time to consider potentially getting into Amazon. Once you're back up here again, not the time to get in up here because you're way away from VWAP. So when it gets overextended away from VWAP, that's another indication or another point in time where you may want to step back and just wait for it to retest into VWAP. And then if you find your support in there, then you can get in bullish. Or if you find your resistance, then you can get in bearish. So those are some of the ways I use the VWAP. You don't trade any strategies based off of VWAP, even though I wait for pops and stuff like that. I don't use those as strategies. For me, it's just more of a tool for trade management and to indicate whether I should or shouldn't get into a trade. Like I said, there's a lot more complex and advanced ways to use VWAP. Use anchored VWAP and several other types of VWAPs that are available out there. Session VWAP and all of that. There's plenty of videos out there. You can go check them out. I know RLT has some, and many other companies have videos out there on YouTube on how to use VWAP. So play with it, check and see how it works best for you. Um, but I use it more for trade management and risk mitigation more so than strategy. I hope this helped and have a great day. Thanks.